All right, so let's get you more now on these and other top political stories of the week. We are now joined by SABC News senior reporter Ntebo Mokobo. Ntebo, always great to chat. Thank you so much for joining us on the program this hour. So the SADC summit happened and many agreements were signed there. Those memorandum of agreements. Talk to us about some of your highlights and what we should be expecting going forward, because some of the conversations were around what happens next after those leaders are done gathering.
Good evening, police, and good evening to the viewers at home. Yes, indeed, the SADC summit happened in South Africa. You will recall that at some point we had to take over the reins as the chair of the SADC. But what really came out is that South Africa's chairship will mainly focus on infrastructure development. You will recall that the SADC region and the entire continent has been struggling when it comes to infrastructure development, and that has hampered development, economic revival of the continent. In fact, the continent is a rich continent, but with a very limited economic activities, and that on its own has affected the continent. So South Africa wanted to use its chairship to make sure that there is infrastructure development and ensure that we speed up the minerals, use the minerals to really develop the SADC region and the continent through industrialization, through beneficiation. So that's one thing that really stood out. And secondly, South Africa wants to make sure that there is something called trade amongst ourselves as the SADC region, what I would call the SADC intra-trade, where all SADC countries, 16 of them, are selling or trading amongst themselves. Currently, what we know is that the SADC inter-trade is around 20%. South Africa wants to ratchet that up or to accelerate that to around 50%. We don't know until when, but in a foreseeable future, South Africa wants to have the SADC inter-trade moving from 20% to around 50%, and that is, it's welcomed. And of course, again, when it comes to the conflict in the continent, there is something interesting that is happening in the Central and East Africa, where President Yoweri Museveni, for instance, has come up with something called the EAC, African Standby Force. You will recall at some point, South Africa, I think around 2013, we came up with something called ASIRIC, the African Capacity for Immediate Response to a Crisis. That unit, or that ASIRIC, was only meant to make sure that there is a standby force. While we're waiting for the operationalization of the African Standby Force, there is at least an interim military force that will respond to crises as and when they happen in the continent. So South Africa again wanted to really make sure that they lessen conflicts in the continent, in the SADC region, and that will open up the region for economic growth.
Yeah, and then zoning into politics, it's a very busy year insofar as electioneering is concerned. The ANC also trying to maybe perhaps pull out all the stops to ensure that they prepare their election manifesto, but seemingly there are some delays there. Talk to us about that.
Well, today this ANC was to brief the media. The media was built for around 2 o'clock this afternoon, but it didn't happen because the Secretary General at around 3:30. From 2 o'clock, we waited until around 3:30. That's when journalists felt that they need to pull out of that briefing because he didn't really pitch up. But nonetheless, what really was the main focus of the briefing was to say what is going to be happening this weekend. You recall that, tomorrow the ANC will be announcing its mayoral candidates. The mayoral candidates, or the approach that the ANC has adopted this time around, is that it's something that they would call a ground-up approach, whereby the ANC is no longer talking to you, but in fact you talking to the ANC, where the ANC is really queuing mandate from ordinary South Africans in terms of who should lead this, our 257 municipalities, 44 districts, and 8 metros. So it was all about that. And recall again that on Sunday, they will be unveiling their manifesto. Again, that manifesto, it's a product of the people of South Africa, where people ordinary South Africans, intellectuals, academics, and civil society organizations were invited to have an input in the ANC election manifesto. So from tomorrow, they unveil they unveil their mayoral candidates. On Sunday, they unveil the manifesto. The manifesto will be unveiled in a place called Riverside Park, somewhere in Deep Slot. That's where the ANC is boasting its track record in terms of service delivery. They built around 9,000 homes for people that were living on the banks of Alexandra. So those people are thankful to the ANC, and that's where the ANC boasts a lot of following. So tomorrow, on Sunday, the president will be there. Around 30,000 people are expected, together with the would-be councillors and mayors of the ANC.
Yeah, and Ntebo, there's so many moving elements insofar as the Madlanga Commission is concerned. In comes the name of the now on special leave Minister Senzo Mchunu, where there are allegations that he tried to sway some of the witnesses appearing before the Madlanga Commission. What do you make of this?
In fact, it was spine-chilling. To hear Colonel Govender this afternoon saying that not long ago, in fact yesterday, the 20th of August to be precise, that he was in a call with one Mr. Ntandane, and Ntandane also made sure that the minister is on the call, and there was a discussion around no, in fact, Mavuso Ntandi, yes. There was a discussion around the minister trying to convince him, allegedly to convince him to lie to the commission that Dr. General Ntlam Khwanazi was involved in those killings in KZN. So that on its own was really spine chilling, and I know that at some point, well, the commission will have to issue a notice. They normally call it a Section 21 notice, because then the minister, the former minister or the minister on leave will have to be called to sort of rebut the allegations that were leveled against him. It clearly shows that he's still really in charge in terms of trying to find anything against Mkhwanazi and his ilk, or Mkhwanazi and his fellows. So that on its own is likely to be really contested in the near future.
All right, Ntebo, there's so much more to unpack, but unfortunately we've ran out of time. I must thank you so much, as always, for chatting to us on the program this evening. That's SABC News senior reporter Ntebo Mokobo joining us there to give us a rundown of everything that led the rundown, in fact, this past week. Thanks so much indeed for that.